3, 2, 1. There we go.
All right.
All right. Hello, social media world. We always just do Facebook and Instagram for these, largely because I don't have a third device. So if anybody wants to lend me a device so we can go live on Twitter too, I will take it. Anyway, so for all of you just joining us now, we're doing our Ask the Expert series, which if you haven't seen that over the last few months, it's just a really fun series where I get to have fun conversations with lots of really cool people, and I enjoy it. So we have local experts like Kyle come in. I have to say that every time because it's fun to get the reaction every time. And Kyle, why don't you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are?
Sure. I'm Kyle Esposito. I've been acting in the community for a very long time, since about 2002. Got started at Rogers Memorial Theater before they became Centerpoint. So back when they were in a very dingy strip mall.
You've seen the growth.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
It's been fun. And then just been performing kind of all over the place since then.
Awesome. So is performing the main thing that you do?
Yeah, performing's been the main thing that I've done. Only recently have I started really focusing on other areas. I've dabbled in tech work throughout the years. I've dabbled in directing throughout the years, but only in the last about 4 years I've really started to put a little bit more concerted effort into.
That's awesome. Well, I auditioned for you once, and I found it a very enjoyable experience.
I'm very glad.
It was fun. I'm like the weird person though that thinks auditioning is fun. Not like the 30-second audition, but like the callbacks.
Oh yeah, I love
Love
callbacks. I
So
hate auditions.
Yeah,
I
it's
love
true.
callbacks.
I just force myself to think of callbacks when I think of auditioning.
It's a good way to think of as it's your own one person 30-second show.
It's true, and that's how I need to start thinking about it. Anyway,
easier said than done.
It's true. Did you catch our auditioning Ask the Experts with Kate?
I saw part of it. I watched as much as I could, but I was watching it on my phone and having to do other things.
And now scrolling. Now they have that really nice like video feature on Facebook, which is very helpful because I'm like that person that can't just sit there and watch. Like I always have to be doing something else. So if I keep scrolling, I'll keep listening. But yeah, we did auditioning with Kate. We did directing with Carol Madsen, which was really fun.
Watched a good chunk of that.
Yeah, I saw some comments there. We did stage combat with Justin Lee, which was really fun too. We got to do some sword fighting. Yeah,
Justin was in the very first show I ever did.
Oh, really? So fun.
Hello, Dolly, way back.
Way long time ago. That's awesome. That's one of the things I love about theater is just how interconnected the worlds become. And it just makes it so fun because you can go to this theater and be like, oh yeah, I did a show with that guy at that other theater. And it just, the relationships are so unique and there's so much crossover, which is so fun. Anyway, well, we'll get to our actual topic for Ask the Experts now. So we asked Kyle to come in and do an acting video for us, which is fun.
Acting.
Right. It's my favorite thing. Like if I had to just pick one thing, it would be acting. I like singing and dancing. I'm in Newsies. So I must like dancing, at least a little.
It's a very heavy dance show.
Yes, it is. And it's been really fun. But if I had to pick one thing as my favorite, it would be acting.
I do love it. It's fun to get to tell a story from someone else's perspective. I love it. Yeah,
it really takes us outside of our own perspective and world because we're forced to think like another person. And I think that's one of the things that makes performing arts it really builds our tolerance for other people and other viewpoints.
Oh yeah, in fact when I've taught other classes before, that's one of the things I talk about is that acting will teach you more about humanity and just getting along with other people than anything else.
That's going in our blog post now. That was my favorite quote of the whole thing right there. So if you had to give us a one sentence answer about what is acting, what would that be it?
Basically, it would be kind of that. It would be looking at a fictional world from a unique perspective, just putting yourself in someone else's shoes.
Looking at a fictional world from a unique perspective. I like that. I'm gonna have to mull on that because I
Yeah.
teach acting classes for little people too, and I'm
Okay.
like, ooh, that might be a really fun definition. I always tell my 5 and 6-year-olds, acting is pretending to be someone or something
Yep.
that you're not,
Yep.
and we just start there. I love that.
But it's so much of the director creates the world that the
Mhm.
actors inhabit, but the actors have to really come up with their own perspective within that world, and I love that way directors and actors can work together. So.
Yeah, bringing the individuality into the
Yeah.
group
Mhm.
setting. Yeah, it's always interesting, and we'll have to talk about that more here in a minute because I feel like sometimes that can be a hard thing to do.
Oh, very much
to
so.
meld those
Very
two
much
things.
so. Yeah.
Especially if it's a show you love as an actor and you come in with like your perspective on a character,
Right.
and then the director goes,
Mhm.
I don't like it.
Right.
You know, what do you? Well, let's just talk about it while we're here. What do you do in that case?
So at least for me as a director, I like to. One of my favorite things is to take older shows and put a new spin or update it
Mhm.
as much as I can. For example, when directing Damn Yankees, a lot of people want to do it very traditional. I recognized the fact that the show is very much a product of its time and has some, I would say, undertones that are sexist, but it's fairly
Mhm.
blatant.
Yeah,
in
it's
moments.
right out there, really.
So I really wanted to kind of subvert that and focus more on making the 2 main female characters a lot more equal.
Hmm.
And the risk on the director side is in casting actors, are you going to be able to find actors who are willing to go there with you?
Right.
I was very, very lucky with all of my actors for that one, that they went with me full steam ahead, and so I'm very grateful for that. But it can be a really difficult thing, especially if you as a director see things from a different
Mhm.
angle and want to tell a different version of the story than the actors expect
Right.
you to tell. But at the same time, I've been on the other side of that table
Mhm.
more often than as a director. I've come in figuring beforehand how I'm going to play play a character, and the director has a completely different
Right, and
approach.
she had to be
And
like,
so
okay.
to switch that. So kind of what makes that so difficult is that there has to be so much trust on both sides of the
Mhm.
table, that you as an actor need to trust that the world that the director makes will be cohesive and make sense, and then the director has to trust the actor to bring that world to life. It's like the director sketches and the actor fills in the color.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Here's the outline.
Yeah.
Now let's make it pretty.
Uh-huh.
That's awesome.
And so much of that comes from the actors.
Mhm.
I've talked with a good friend of mine, Josh Richardson, and he's directing Spelling Bee at Centerpoint right now. And he and I we've been in shows together. He's directed me. I've been on his production teams, and we've talked about that about 90% of directing is casting. Is finding
the right people
finding
in
the right
roles.
the right people who will fit together that you can trust.
Yeah.
And that's 90% of what directing's about.
Yeah, that's awesome. That makes a lot of sense. So as an actor, we're going to skip past the audition process and all of that. We're cast in a show, and we get a script, and maybe the director gives us like a little outline.
Mhm.
What is the first thing you do in developing a character?
The first thing I do, I'm very much kind of I like finding the physicality of a character first, before I discover any background or anything like that. I like to focus on stance and how I walk and things like that first. The main acting technique I follow is the great playwright playwright Anton Chekhov's nephew, Michael Chekhov, studied under Stanislavski, and he did his own little variation of method acting.
I did not know he was the nephew.
Yeah.
That's a fun little connection. Yeah. That's awesome.
I found, when I was in New York, I found this like 6-hour masterclass that he did in the 50s, and just,
so fun.
Of course, it was like $200-300, cost more than my plane ticket to New York, but I had to buy it.
Well, of course.
But it was so fun, so informative. But he talks about when a character walks in, what is their aura? Not necessarily supernatural aura, but just what
feeling.
What do you think of a person when they first walk into a room? Are they a confident person? Are they a shy, timid person? Are they an intelligent person? And, in different methods and things like that, one of them talks about that a character leads from either one of 3 points in the body, and I'll be a little more tactful than I sometimes am with one of these. They lead with either their head, their heart, or their hips. Trying to be a little more family.
Yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense.
But that tends to be where people lead from.
Mm-hmm.
Confident people, very emotional, power-driven people tend to lead with their chest, their arms, their shoulders very broad.
Yeah, and you tell me both.
And
just
so,
confident.
And that's
confident.
A very confident, powerful, emotional stance. Whereas something a little more cerebral, you tend to hunch a little bit more and you lead with your head. Mm-hmm. If you're more cocky, you have that swagger and you lead with your hips. And that's kind of where the basis, that's where I start, is like, what of those three do they fits best? Mm-hmm. And then I start building, okay, within that realm, what would be their most confident, least confident, moments within that range.
Okay.
And start to kind of construct the physicality. And once I feel like I've got the stance and the walk and everything like that, that's when I feel like I can start really digging deeper into more of why he is the way that he is and things like that. So that's where I start. It doesn't work for everyone.
Right. Well, that makes sense, though, because a lot of, our bodies kind of shape our thoughts a lot of times, too, or show our thoughts, but you can do it the other way.
Yeah.
Too. You can start outward and move it inward. I really like that. And that probably, one of our questions was like, how do you get away from your own mannerisms as a person and pick up like a character's mannerisms?
Right, and that's part of it too, but of course now with having played so many roles, I don't know who I am anymore. My stance is very different at different points. So, but that is one of the things that helps me get out of myself is constructing a new person's stance and physicality. How do they gesture with their hands and arms and things like that, as opposed to how I would. Yeah. So
that's really, I like that a lot. How do you make decisions, like character decisions, that aren't written in to the script?
One of the ways that I've kind of been taught from a few different directors is as you're kind of experimenting, doing, reading through on your own, have your instinctual choices and things like that, and then also what the opposite choice would be, and start playing it that way just to see how it works. And you'll usually make some really interesting discoveries. You'll only use like a piece or two from that opposite list, but it can really add some depth and make something interesting. But it's all about subtext. People don't typically say what they actually mean.
Which is what men get so mad at women for. And we're like, no, it's fine.
Yeah, so they don't, just people, not just women.
I'm
but men don't like to admit this.
It's true, they do it too. They do it too.
We do. We don't always say what we really mean. There's always something underneath that is motivating what we say what we think will achieve our goals. And that's very much the same with, at least in a good script, of a character, that they say what they need to in order to accomplish their goals. Is that the truth? Is that a lie? Depends. What is the most interesting choice to play that emotion or play that line?
Yeah, because especially on stage, you want to be interesting.
Right.
So if you could accomplish it in like a boring way or a slightly more interesting way.
Exactly. But if you just play it completely straight the whole time, no one's going to care.
Yeah. No one's gonna. Yeah, that's so true. And I've seen wonderful productions where just one person has done that, and you're like, oh, I just wish that guy had just like I don't even know what it was.
The way I like to describe it is that person is in a different show. They're not in the same show as
everybody
everyone
else. Is in this world, and this guy just like got
kind
picked
of
up
off the fringe and doing his own thing.
That's awesome. This was one of my interesting questions. How do you play similar characters in a way where they're not exactly the same? So like Disney princesses, for like Belle and Ariel.
Okay.
I mean, like all Disney princesses have a little bit of a similar feel to them.
It's true.
But at the same time, and I've seen this happen, wonderful actresses get cast in like 3 Disney princess roles in a row.
There is a
and by the third one, it's like,
it.
okay, we've seen this show before. Like, so how do you do that if like you are playing? That
is a really good question. It's really difficult and that's where that's more on the digging deeper side of it. After you've established the stances and everything, that's when you start looking at, okay, why are they the way that they are? In the case of Belle and Ariel, it would be very easy to play them basically the same. They're both very independent, sassy characters, but you look at their relationship dynamics, and that's where you can start to find the differences. In the case of Belle, has a very strong relationship with her father, and so there is a camaraderie, there is a reliance upon each other, whereas Ariel is a lot more, she has a very strained relationship with her father. It's a lot more, the independence is different. In Belle, the independence is because she had to. Yeah. In Ariel, it's because she's a teenager.
Because she wants, because I am 16 years old, Daddy. I am not a child.
So that does kind of start changing the motivation behind the lines. But it's really, really easy to kind of fall into that. And, you see that in big movie stars, too. Usually when you go see a Tom Cruise movie, it's going to be Tom Cruise playing Tom Cruise.
Right, yeah. It follows
and he's going to do some idiotic stunt, and we will be entertained. And
and exactly.
About the extent of it.
And it doesn't mean it's not good. I mean, like I said, I've seen very talented actresses who are very entertaining, who just kind of did the same thing. And so, like, it's something that I, as a performer, was curious about. Yeah. Because it's a hard thing to do, and I don't know.
And something that helps, I think, is as an actor, go for the character roles. Don't go for the leads. I mean, we are all insecure narcissists. Otherwise, we would not be performing on stage. So
it's a little bit true.
It is. So you have to kind of set aside your desire to be the one people clap loudest for in curtain call.
Pretty one.
And start going for the more interesting roles, the more character, all of the side characters. They're typically far more interesting.
That is true.
There's a lot more variety in those types of characters because, romantic leads are typically one of 4 basic template personalities, and they don't really extend outside of that very often. So go for the character roles, and I think that will help a lot. If you look at the careers of character actors, famous character actors, they have much longer careers.
That's true.
Gary Oldman has been acting for forever, and he's always different. Yeah. So you kind of he's succeeded for so long because he can find those little differences between each character.
So work on that by expanding your skill set and taking a few more secondary, more interesting roles.
Yeah,
that will
or even
develop you as an actor.
even go right in the gate. Go for something different. Do some. I like to say that rule number 1 of acting is know thy type. After you know your type,
move outside it.
Go against type. Start auditioning for roles that don't fit. You won't get them very often, but when you do, you will learn so much.
Yeah, that's awesome. We have, let's see, Chad in Wilburn. Hi, Chad. I hope he's still watching. Asked a question. How do you learn more about a character that you already know a lot about?
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's a very good question. I think you need to kind of approach it and kind of try to, it's again easier said than done, but try to clear out the memory of a lot of those facts and things like that and kind of start over. Sometimes, again, it's easier said than done, especially if you're playing someone who was real, portraying a true story. I did a couple years ago 1776 at Centerpoint, and I was cast as John Adams. I had it in my head to play it kind of a certain way, and then with reading and then through help with the director, we decided that we weren't going to play the story of the reality of what happened, but play it almost as an allegory for political differences and strong opinions now.
Yeah.
And so we started to inject some of more modern takes and things like that onto it. And that helped make it feel new, make it feel different. Because if I know that my portrayal was not remotely like John Adams actually was, but it was fun to kind of having the knowledge of him and all of the plentiful research available. It was very nice to pick a lot of pieces, but we still had to create something new. And it comes down to, this is for actors, directors, anyone, any designers, what is the story that you want to tell in a given show? Is the story, the story of 1776? It's not so much the story of what historically happened, it's what can we do to find compromise? And that's what the story became about. And so to fit that story, we had to disregard some of the things that we had already known about the characters that we were portraying.
Yeah,
and
really interesting.
Find new ways to approach a character. I hope that very, very convoluted description helped.
I think that was a great just off the cuff. Oh yeah, here's what I would do. So it's kind of, you set aside preconceived notions that you already have about this character or this person, work with the director for under what their vision for the show is, and then just go from there.
Yeah.
Read the script again, pick up more details. I know one thing, I had a teacher who told me once to go through the script and look for everything that everybody said about that character when they weren't on stage.
Yeah.
And I had never thought
perceived?
to do that. Yeah, exactly. Because there can be a big difference between what I think of myself as a person and what other people who interact with me think and whatever they say when I'm not there.
Yeah. Right.
Could be worlds apart.
Well, that's kind of why I've latched onto that idea of creating physicality and of that aura of what do you think of a person when they walk in the room?
Yeah.
As opposed to what are the things that they say.
Right. Because if somebody thinks that your character is really cocky, even if the character doesn't think that, you have to find a way so that line makes sense to the audience when it's said. Yeah,
they may think they're very intelligent individual, but in reality, they are just obstinate and very passion driven, and so that definitely changes how you would stand and things like that.
Yeah, that's great. Chad, I hope that answered your question. Go ahead and leave us another comment if you want to follow up with that or clarify anything. If anybody else has any questions, we'd love to hear them too, so just type them in and we'll get there. We kind of already talked about this a little bit, but I think we could cover it a little bit more. How do you work your vision for a character with the directors?
Okay.
Like, how, or just in your experience, maybe, like, how collaborative has that been?
It really does depend on the director. Sometimes, and all of these, this is not a critique on different approaches, because I've enjoyed directors who have these different approaches. Some directors have their vision in their head, just right off,
That's the way it is.
and they cast according to what matches the vision in their head. And there's nothing wrong with that, because that's they know what story they want to tell, and they know where the pieces fit in that. Whereas there are other actors or other directors who will cast a show that will go into callbacks almost blind, not quite knowing what they want. They'll just know when they see it, kind of a thing. And there's nothing wrong with that either, because they want that kind of experience and they want a different kind of show.
Right.
And both of those approaches work, and there's all the variations between them. So the big thing as an actor is you're going to deal with all of those different directors. So first of all, you have to be adaptable. And you have to know, honestly, you have to know your place, that you and your vision, while important, are not the most important. There are others above you.
So set aside your insecure narcissism.
Right,
over
exactly.
here.
So that is something that you really have to, and sometimes the way you think it comes across on stage, what you're going for is the right idea, but it's just not reading. And so the director may give you ideas to, have a different approach in order to come to the same conclusion. But it's really important. I mean, first of all, it's really important to take notes from a director. Just for logistical reasons, because if you don't take notes from a director, directors talk, and
they get back around to all the other theaters eventually.
Yeah, you think the circle of actors is small? It's a really small circle for the directors, and they all talk, even if they don't like each other. They'll still talk.
Well, and because it is a small circle of directors, like, you're going to be auditioning for that director again. And if you like keep yelling at them that their ideas are wrong and yours idea are better, they're never going to cast you again.
Right. And that's going to spread like wildfire if you don't take notes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there is that issue of you want to keep getting hired as a reason to take notes. But also, part of what I think is the fun of acting is making those discoveries, and sometimes a slightly different approach that you never would have thought of, but a director can see you're almost there. Those discoveries are really fun, really fulfilling. So going back to kind of that, having to have that trust between the director and the actor, it's a tough relationship.
Yeah.
And
especially when you both care so much about the show and the characters and the product.
Yeah. And I think just in general as human beings, we tend to want very similar things.
Yeah.
And so that's important to keep in mind as well, that the director wants the show to be the best it can be as well. And you have that common goal.
Yeah.
So trust the director and the perspective that they see things. And sometimes you're gonna come across a director who doesn't trust you, and that sucks. It's not fun.
Dang it.
But it happens. It happens all the time. And do the show to the best of your ability. And then just ever badmouth that director, because that will again.
It goes back around.
Yeah, but don't necessarily work for him again.
Yeah.
But find, and that's kind of an important thing with any sort of performing arts, is trying to find where you fit. What is the best way that you work, and find people that match that.
Mm-hmm.
But don't be afraid to spread your wings and try something new. So I think we've got response and question.
Chad says, you answered it great, thank you. And his new question is, how can you keep a character that's probably been the same thing that everyone else has done as that character?
Oh, yeah, how do you keep a character
How do you keep a character new?
That's
a hard one.
Yeah,
well, and some characters people expect to see the same thing. Like,
right.
I had in high school.
For good or bad.
Yes. Like, The King and I was always the example that my high school theater teacher used. Like, if you come to see The King and I, you expect to see Yul Brynner. Like, you don't expect to see a new take on The King. You expect to see exactly what Yul Brynner did.
And that's kind of, that's another conversation you're going to have with the director, is do you want to do a rehashed show? Because sometimes that can be fun.
Yeah, it was a great show. People loved the characters.
Yeah.
They loved the take on it. Let's just do it again.
And you can add, a couple new things here and there to make it fun for you. Or you and the director can decide to do something completely different and subvert expectations. Mm-hmm. And it's a very risky thing to do, but the payoff can be huge. Because no one's going to remember the exact same production of Sound of Music, of Joseph. They know exactly what they're going to see. So it can be really interesting to see something new and different. The flip side of that is if you do a poor job of it, people will still talk about it for a very long time.
They will remember it, and it will be the one production of Sound of Music that I hated.
Right.
Oh my gosh, Sound of Music, I hate it.
Hi,
everybody.
Brandon's back from Europe. We're very glad Brandon's back from Europe.
I don't disagree. I am not a big fan. No.
It's okay. It's fine.
But that is a really tough. That's a tough question of doing something new with the same story, and I think that actually keeping what has been done before in mind is especially important if you're wanting to do something new and original. Kind of with that list of of your instincts tell you that to play these lines one way, and list the opposite of your instincts, you can do kind of the same thing with that. These are the ways that this has been done before.
Yeah.
What would be the opposite of that? And you can make some fun discoveries kind of along those lines. I mean, don't just play opposite the whole time, because then it's just weird.
Just to do it.
Right.
Yeah, but in that discovery phase.
Yeah. And then also decide what is the story that you're telling, and find those choices that fit the story. I'm a big fan of directors' concepts and things like that, but doing a concept for a concept's sake is always a bad idea, because it's always weird when you see these weird interpretations set with 1940s gangsters, and and it's this weird dynamic. It does not work. But there are other times, I use an example of, there's a show I absolutely hate, and it's Spring Awakening.
Oh.
I hate the show. But when I was in New York, Deaf West was putting it on, and I was really curious about watching deaf actors do a musical. And I went to see it. It was one of the most amazing pieces of art I've ever seen, because because my issue with it's not so much content as context. Spring Awakening is very much sex for sex sake. Whereas the Deaf West used sex as an allegory of what it was like to be deaf in 1930s Germany and not have a voice.
Interesting.
And so that completely changed how the story came across.
Yeah.
And it was no longer just we're being edgy because it's cool. It's then it
Right, we
became
have a reason.
this is the story that we want to tell, and we use these tools. And
Right.
that completely changed the show and made me fall in love with it.
That's awesome.
That kind of thing is, it's important. What is the story that you are trying to tell, and make the choices that fit within that realm.
That's awesome. You sound so much like Carol when we did our directors Ask the Experts, and Carol was like, "What's your story? What's your vision?" Which was so good though, and it applies to both, like directing and acting, in a lot of ways.
That's one of the reasons Carol is one of my favorite directors I've ever worked with.
Okay, so I'm being really awkward and weird right here because I'm trying to read my Instagram comment. So April Daw is asking, when you get the comment to try something different in an audition, how far off path is it okay to go?
I would say fairly. At least from my perspective when I direct. When I ask someone to make a different choice, it's because I want to see that they'll take direction. Rather than what the choice is, I just want to see that they can take direction.
It doesn't necessarily matter.
So in an audition setting, it does still matter, but I know that is one of the main reasons that a director will ask that question. But also take a moment, and no, I cannot think of a single director worth his or her salt that won't let an actor take a moment before restarting the scene. Take a moment and kind of think through it, take a deep breath, relax, and sometimes trust your instincts. But definitely, if it's the exact same, the director is not going to cast you. And
you could just do what you've been, like that really useful tool of opposites. Like, I made this choice and he wanted something different, so I'm just going to do the opposite choice. If that makes sense, maybe not. One of my actors, so I'm currently directing Cash on Delivery at Centerpoint Theater, and one of my actors he asked me, do you want me to play it this way or that way or this other way? I said, okay, what's the most interesting choice to you? What do you think is the most interesting? What makes it different? What makes it interesting to you? Because usually that's where you'll find the most information, is what is interesting to you as an actor to inform the choices of your character. Because everyone finds different things interesting. Yeah, well, and if you're excited about it as an actor, you're going to work on it harder. And the joy that you have in doing it is going to come across naturally a lot better. Very, very much so. My fifth way of being successful on stage that I teach my 5- and 6-year-olds is we have fun. Well, I cannot fathom why you would want to be in this honestly hellish industry if you're not having fun with it. Every time I'm waiting for a cast list to come out, I'm like, I swear this is the last time I'm going to do this. This is the last time. Michael Caine wrote a book, Acting in Film, and in it he says, if you can envision yourself doing anything at all other than acting, do that. There you go. It's good advice, honestly. All right, we'll see if we have. Would it be appropriate to ask those questions in an audition? So same April that just asked about the other thing. Yes, very. I love that kind of collaboration, especially in an audition callback setting. Because that's what's interesting for me as a director, is actors who will make me think of things in a different way. Definitely ask questions. Please, please, please ask questions. You will come up with a far better product the more questions that are asked. That's because what's interesting in life is not the answers, it's the questions. It's the process, people, which is really what most really good shows, whether they're musicals or straight plays, are about, is like some characters having a crisis or a question,
Right.
and they're moving through the process of figuring it out.
Right.
And that's what makes an interesting story.
Yeah. The conclusion provides closure,
Right.
but what's
We always
interesting
do.
is the conflict.
Yeah. It's
So-
how we get to it. So, but if you were at an audition and a director said, make a different choice,
Mhm.
you would consider it completely appropriate to go, great, I'd love to make a different choice. Do you have any suggestions?
Mhm.
Or
Yeah.
something like that?
Something like, usually a director will give you a little more specifics, a little more specific guidance, but sometimes it may just be make a different choice. I think that it's a really fine line. If you're in a situation where you're going to be able to read 3 or 4 times, I would definitely make a different choice first and then ask before the third.
Okay.
Because it's always good to show that you can take direction
Right.
without having your hand held the
Yeah,
whole
that
way.
you can hear, I want to see something different from you. Okay, I can handle that. I can
Right.
bring you something different, and we'll go from there.
And if they say something similar again, then it's more, okay, do you have something in mind?
Yeah. Are you looking for something
Do you
specific?
have an example of what you're looking for or something that you're not liking that I can do differently? Now, if you only get to read once or twice, honestly, then it comes down to, if you've never worked with the director before and you don't know anything about the director, then
Right.
it's kind of a 50-50
Yeah,
shot as to
right,
which
right,
is going to be
yeah.
the better choice.
That makes sense. Are you needing to just return a shirt to me real fast? All right, come on in. You're fine. You're doing a live video. You can come say hi.
Hi,
Hello. Do you want to say what? Tell us what your name is.
Barrett.
Barrett, and you're in Newsies, aren't you, Barrett?
Yeah.
Love it. Was this the what's brown? What do I need
it's
to
a
do?
Medium.
It's a medium.
Yeah, and I got a small.
Perfect. Okay, I will fix that for you after rehearsal. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for letting me know. I think those are all of our questions, all of our things. So, do you have anything else that you'd like to add to that? And I will just check. Yeah, April says thanks.
Okay.
You are giving amazing answers. Way to go, Kyle from Chad.
I am a big fan of. I think one of the most important things to be as an actor is good to work with. More of the less of the acting process and more of the acting career side. It's extremely important to be good to work with. If you're weak in some areas, if you struggle with making different choices, or if you kind of do play the same basic character, if you're good to work with, you'll still get far more consistent work than if you're paying,
Right.
but you make
But
good
you're
acting
amazing.
choices. Then you'll find some work here and there, but you're not going to work consistently. And especially with a lot of the one of the really good things, in addition to the already good things that the movement has done, but with the Me Too movement, there's a big focus on the way we behave in a professional environment, whatever that is. And that is making you see far better behaved actors,
Right.
better behaved directors, better behaved technicians. And so everyone is just behaving better and being more collaborative, being good to work with. And especially if you're going to be auditioning for, if down the line you audition for something that takes you out of state, say you do a cruise ship or a theme park or something
Right.
like that. So I've done that, and that's incredibly stressful. The important thing for that is that you show them that you are someone that they'll want to spend the next 4, 5, 6 months to a year working with. Because you're going to be in very close quarters so much of the
Right.
time. So be aware of, keep your anchor in check, That's a big one. It's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to show frustration, but make sure that you do so in a healthy, productive way. And sometimes venting is okay, but vent to the right people. Vent to your family back home,
yes.
rather than to the director, the stage
people.
manager, and create a problem. But it is so important to be someone people enjoy being around. That doesn't mean you have to be an extrovert at all times. I am certainly not an extrovert. I very much like being away from people, which is a very strange industry for me to be in.
It's amazing how many introverts are drawn to performing, though. It's true.
Just be kind to each other. Be respectful, especially in such a stressful work environment of theater or film, any sort of performing arts. It's a very, very stressful situation, and just keep in mind that you are not the only one with that stress, that everyone else is experiencing that stress as well, and be mindful of that.
Right. That's awesome.
And I think with good attitude and some good basic instincts, you'll go pretty far, and tenacity.
Yeah. Keep auditioning.
Yeah.
Do not give up after like 3 auditions. It's okay.
And also if kind of along those lines, if you're auditioning again and again and again and again and not going anywhere, obviously you are doing something wrong. Yeah.
Because it's not just one theater.
So be self-aware. Just recognize your faults. Don't fall into the trap of beating yourself up over them all the time, but you have to recognize your weaknesses and say, okay, these are the things that I will do to correct that, to improve my craft, and that's the biggest thing, is always work to improve your craft. You are never at the end of that journey.
Which we recognize at OPA and we love. Oh, come here, buddy.
Mom, what can I do now?
You know what? Newsies rehearsal is about to start.
The computer is dead.
My 7-year-old is here with me because we have Newsies rehearsal. Okay, Josiah, I need like 3 more minutes. Okay.
Mama,
I know the computer's dead. He was playing a math game, so I'm not like a terrible mom. Just wait outside for a couple minutes. I'll be done in just a minute.
I'll swallow over there.
Okay, that would be great. Don't leave the building, but there's a bunch of Newsies people down the hall. I love how family friendly we are at OPA. But yeah, it's so true what you were saying about improving our craft and just investing in that, especially with something that you're really interested in doing. Even if you're interested in doing it as a hobby, get out and take some classes. And we offer a great series of classes here at OPA, which Kyle's actually teaching our next one. What are you teaching?
Character development and things and character creation. So kind of what I've talked about earlier on with this Q&A thing, going a lot more in depth and working with people on their specific choices and how they can improve. Which is awesome. So you'll get to workshop a lot of the things that Kyle talked about at the beginning of our video. And that's on Saturday, July 22nd. And it's $35. It's 2 hours. It's just $35, which is like a screaming good deal, honestly. Just really I'll be there in just a second. Oh my goodness. We're going to have to go to rehearsal. But you can also get a 4-pack for that masterclass series. So you get to do acting with Kyle, Shakespeare with Mark Bosson, directing with Jamie Allen, and then stage combat with Justin Lee, all for just $100, which is great. All right, my son is ready to go to rehearsal. So we're going to sign off, but we're done anyway. Yeah. All right, thank you so much, guys. Have a great day. We'll talk to you later. Okay. Okay, that's not a real thing.